One by one, the officers searching for a killer began to disappear. Each time, a clue was left behind, and when the case finally ended, the killer delivered himself to the police station. Tonight's story isn't just about a serial killer. It's about a man who turned an entire police department into his audience, his puzzle, and ultimately, his final message. This isn't just a tale of crime and punishment. It is a chilling psychological deep dive into how one man stayed steps ahead of law enforcement and why his last act still haunts everyone involved. By the end of this story, you'll understand the chilling precision behind his plan and the terrifying reason he chose to end the game on his own terms. Our story begins in 2007 in Riverton, a mid-sized industrial city in the northeastern United States. At first, the murders that began to ripple through the city didn't seem connected. They occurred in different neighborhoods with different methods and targeted different victims from all walks of life. The city was on edge, but the police were struggling to find a common thread. That is, until a sharp-eyed investigator noticed one bone-chilling detail. Every single victim was a law enforcement officer. But not just any random officers, they were all actively assigned to the same special task force. A task force created for one specific purpose: to hunt down a serial killer the media had nicknamed the Watchman. Slowly, horrifyingly, the truth began to sink in. The Watchman wasn't hiding from the police. He wasn't running. He was studying them. He was turning their own investigation back on them, hunting the very people who were supposed to be hunting him. The city of Riverton was about to become the stage for a deadly cat-and-mouse game, where the roles of hunter and hunted were about to be terrifyingly reversed. The first officer from the task force was found during what his colleagues initially thought was a routine welfare check. His car was parked neatly outside his suburban home. There was no sign of forced entry, no shattered glass, no kicked-in door. And inside, there was no sign of a struggle. Everything was in its place. But on the living room wall, pinned neatly like a museum exhibit, was a handwritten note. It contained just 6 words. You looked in the wrong direction. Detectives at the scene chalked it up to psychological warfare, a killer taunting them from the shadows. They assumed he was trying to sow confusion to throw them off his trail. But they were wrong. It wasn't just a taunt. It was a statement of fact. Then, the second officer assigned to the Watchman task force disappeared. For days, his family and colleagues held on to hope, plastering the city with missing person flyers. But that hope was shattered when his body was discovered in a derelict warehouse on the edge of town. This time, the clue left behind was even more specific. Placed carefully beside him was a torn fragment of a city map. The fragment circled a single location, a police precinct. Not just any precinct, but the one where the task force was headquartered. The message was becoming undeniably clear. The killer wasn't just observing from a distance. He knew things he shouldn't know. A terrifying realization began to spread through the department like a virus. The Watchman knew their shift schedules. He knew the surveillance camera blind spots around the precinct. He knew which officers had a habit of working alone and which ones sometimes ignored protocol for the sake of a shortcut. This wasn't a criminal getting lucky or making educated guesses. This was someone with intimate, inside knowledge. This was someone watching from the inside. With every new crime, the killer delivered another piece of his puzzle. Each clue was more personal, more invasive than the last. One time, it was a locker key belonging to a third victim left on the dashboard of his own patrol car. Another time, it was a badge number scrawled on the wall of a crime scene. Then came a direct quote from the official police training manual, a phrase only an officer would know by heart, left with the fourth body. The clues were everywhere, yet they led nowhere. They were specific and yet agonizingly vague. It was as if the killer wanted the police to chase him, to follow the breadcrumbs he laid out, but he designed the trail so they would never, ever arrive at the destination. He was playing with them, turning their investigation into a frustrating dead-end maze. Profilers brought in to consult on the case came to a disturbing conclusion. They believed the watchman wasn't killing out of rage or a thirst for violence. He was teaching. In his twisted, arrogant mind, he viewed the police department as careless, predictable, and undeserving of the authority they held. Each murder, each meticulously placed clue, was, in his view, a lesson, a brutal, public demonstration of their incompetence. He was exposing their weaknesses, one officer at a time. Inside the Riverton Police Department, morale didn't just drop, it collapsed. The building that was once a symbol of safety and order became a house of fear. Officers who had once walked the streets with confidence now refused to go on solo patrols. Some took extended leave, citing stress or family emergencies. Others, too afraid to go home, started sleeping on cots at the station, believing there was safety in numbers, but the fear was suffocating. They looked at their colleagues with suspicion, wondering who could be the source of the leaks. Trust eroded completely. And still, the killings continued. The clues kept coming. The watchman's lessons were not over. Then, one gray, rainy morning, everything just stopped. At exactly 6:12 a.m., the main switchboard at the Riverton Police Department received a call. The connection was clear. The voice was calm and male. He said only one sentence. "He's already here." Then he hung up. The dispatcher, shaken, relayed the message. Officers, armed and on high alert, cautiously moved to the front entrance of the station. They expected an ambush, a trap, another one of the killer's cruel games. But what they found was something else entirely. There, sitting upright against the cold, wet stone of the building's front steps, was a man. He was in his late 30s, dressed in plain clothes. There was no movement, no sign of resistance. He was just sitting there. In his lap, resting in his hands, was a sealed manila envelope. Cautiously, officers approached him. They quickly realized he wasn't a threat. He wasn't moving at all. Inside the envelope, they found an ID. His name was Daniel Crow, a name no one on the task force recognized. He was a former police records technician who had been dismissed years earlier after filing repeated and ultimately ignored complaints about departmental negligence and security flaws. He had died sometime during the night. The medical examiner would later rule the cause of death as self-inflicted, a carefully timed and deliberately executed act. Pinned to the front of his shirt, just like the notes at the other crime scenes, was his final message. It read, "You finally caught me, but only because I let you." The clues stopped. The killings ended. Just like that, the game was over. Daniel Crow had never been a suspect. He was a ghost in the machine, a man who had worked quietly behind the scenes for years. His job as a records technician gave him access to everything: personnel files, shift schedules, patrol routes, internal memos, and surveillance system layouts. He had watched, he had waited, and when he was ready, he weaponized his knowledge. He turned the department's own investigation into a mirror, forcing every officer to stare into it and confront their own vulnerabilities, their own arrogance, their own sloppiness. He didn't just want to commit murder, he wanted to prove a point. He wanted to dismantle their sense of superiority from the inside out. The case of the watchman was officially closed. The killer had been identified. But inside the Riverton Police Department, nothing was ever the same. The silence in the hallways was heavier. The trust between partners, once implicit, was now something that had to be consciously earned back. Major changes were implemented. Training protocols were completely rewritten. Security was tightened to a degree no one had ever thought necessary. And one particular phrase, a proud motto that had been painted on the wall of the task force room, was quietly painted over. It read, "We control the streets," because for a brief, horrifying period of time, they didn't. Someone else did, and he made sure they would never, ever forget it. Thank you for watching. If you're fascinated by the psychology behind the world's most complex criminal cases, subscribe to Crazy Crime Diary. We dig into the stories where the hunter becomes the hunted and the truth is stranger than any fiction. Stay safe, and we'll see you in the next investigation.